It's not just taking the data at the face value, but asking that second and third question. You're not just going to keep losing in the same thing over and over. We all know the definition of insanity, right?
That insanity, the definition of insanity, I think is a great term to use there, right? And especially over time, I think you don't want to get into your 6 months into the year, or however you're measuring kind of your business growth, and then get caught off guard by lost reasons or finding that you were doing something over and over again that wasn't getting you results. So
initiating becoming a hiring machine sequence in 3, 2, 1.
Hey everyone, it's Sam Keenley, and welcome to Becoming a Hiring Machine. This is the show dedicated to fixing recruitment by going beyond saying what needs to change and instead teaches you how to make that change. Today, we have a great Tactical Tuesday episode ahead of us, but before we get into that, I just want to tell you a little bit about the show. Essentially, we have shows within the show here. Some days we have interviews with industry thought leaders and others who are shaking up the space, while other days we cover things like trending topics. Every Tuesday, like today, come by for a Tactical Tuesday episode where we go deep on how to do something that's going to help you drive better results in your day-to-day. Some days we open it up for Q&A. Listeners can drop in questions for us that they'd like to hear us take on, so send those to us, podcast@loxo.co. And occasionally, you'll get a mic drop episode from Matt where he stops by to share something that he's been thinking about within the recruitment space and wants you to know. All right, today we are sadly wrapping up the 5-episode mini-series on all things reporting. So we have Logan, one of our CSM team leads, joining us for one final show to go over all the essential things that we need to know when it comes to this arena. And today's episode is actually, it's going to be I think this topic's kind of fun, but it's going to revolve around all things business growth, reporting, and analysis. So I think this will be an incredibly impactful one to zoom out a little bit from the day-to-day tactical to really look at your business, the insights that you can glean from the data, and most importantly, like how you can surface those for yourself so you can start actioning them moving forward. So grab pen and paper. Let's get to it. Logan, welcome back.
Sam, how's it going? Good to be back.
It's good. And these are always fun. We're going to have to come up with a new series to bring you back on after these. I know people have been loving these on social. You've been getting some more engagement than any of the other ones that we have. So there's something to it.
I'm just doing my job, I guess.
All right. So business growth. To you, why is business growth so important to be reporting on and gathering these insights?
I think when we look at, bigger scale and kind of what I think this episode is going to be about, economic conditions change, daily, right? And I think as you start to look at your agency, whether you are, again, a one-person show or you've got a team of 30 people, it's good to be able to look at where business growth opportunities are and then putting resources and efforts towards the ones that are actually benefiting you. So I think this reporting really works kind of in tandem with business development, and that you can begin to really break down where your opportunities are coming from, and then almost in turn where your revenue is coming from, and then focus those efforts there.
Yeah. And it's like, this is the macro before you get into that more tactical side. So as we say, we're talking about like business growth. So business development, if you want to hear anything about like outreach related topics reporting, we have an episode about that specifically earlier in the series. So definitely check that out. Today, we're going to get into the business results side. So not necessarily the sense of like, how are we thinking about acquiring new clients for us long term and everything? So some of the reports that we're going to get into, I know you and I have been building these the past couple weeks to really make sure we've got something good for our listeners. So if you want to jump in and basically we've got 3 core reports that we're going to walk through today. We've got a loss analysis, which is basically like, why are we losing deals and what can we learn about them? We're looking at win and loss by the different sales reps that are working on your deals. And then we've got what we call like a split the funnel analysis. So how are you slicing and dicing the deals that you're working to understand which revenue channels are least effective and what you should be doing about that moving forward. So do you want to start us at the top with the loss analysis?
Absolutely. So we should be able to see that. And this report here is really just identifying, because while we definitely want to celebrate wins, and those are always the most fun to look at, you got to look at the other side as well, and start to manage, where the losses are coming from. And what we did here was we grouped by a loss reason. And I think those are custom, that can be a custom field that you create, and it's one that I suggest often. And what we could see here is then you could start to break down where, like from a numerical standpoint, deals, or why rather deals are being lost, and then starting to manage where you're putting any of those deal efforts uh, moving forward, right? And you can start to identify, I guess again, I use this phrase a lot, but a kink in the process, and start to look at where do we need, or do we need to change how we're approaching these sort of deals, or is this just something we need to maybe stay away from altogether?
Mhm.
Um, but it's a really just clear view of looking at, and you can add filters for over time, but it's just a super clear view of reasons that deals did not come through.
Yeah. And so, as you're talking about, build your own custom fields for this. And then another recommendation would be to not have it be a free text field, but use a hierarchy field where people on the team, you have to bucket the answer, so to speak. So, in here, we've got different ones. So, if you say like lost to competitor and you've got three big competitors, you could list competitor one, competitor two, competitor three. If you lose deals due to pricing or cost issues, have cost be a bucket. If you're losing due to they just end up using their internal hire, or it's an internal placement, have that be a bucket. And so what you can do is then start to categorize it this way. So what Logan and I are viewing on the screen currently is it's just a bar chart that breaks down, so you can see which ones have the most, which ones have the least, and then you can break it down from within there. You can see the details like Logan's got on the screen now. And then yeah, one thing that you start to get into is you can further segment it. So say you only work with a couple of specific clients. Like if we wanted to go and segment it by the companies that the deals were, you could get some interesting insights where you might see, like, we've got Apple on here, Salesforce, just some example companies. You can see like with Apple, we keep losing to competitor one. Why is that? But we never lose to competitor two. You can use that to inform, do we need to position ourselves differently, or what's Apple getting from them that we're not doing? So again, it's not just taking the data at the face value, but asking that second and third question to inform what can you do to apply to your team moving forward. So you're not just going to keep losing in the same thing over and over. We all know the definition of insanity, right? So how can we improve upon some of this? So any other ways that you like to look at this, Logan?
I think you nailed it on the head, and that insanity, yeah, the definition of insanity, I think is a great term to use there, right? And you don't, especially over time, I think you don't want to get into your 6 months into the year, or however you're measuring kind of your business growth, and then get caught off guard by lost reasons, or finding that you were doing something uh, over and over again that wasn't getting you results. So again, this just gives you, it's not necessarily always the most fun thing to look at, but I'd also challenge you to think of it in a fun way of where can I be better to get some of these deals won.
Hmm. And I love how you say, where can I do this? Because that you can do this at the individual level. If you're a rep, you're closing deals, you can look at this for yourself. Or if you're a manager, a business owner, you can look at this across your entire company. It's going to be equally valuable in both ways. So that's the initial loss analysis report. And again, you can do the same exact thing for win analysis. Why are we losing winning deals? Because again, you're going to want to know some of those. So make sure you're capturing both of those data points. But onto the next report, which is if you look at like your sales rep win and loss report.
Yep. And again, I think a couple ways you can break this down. This doesn't necessarily have to be looking at who's doing better than who, but at the same time, I think what you look at here is, if I'm looking at Matt and I see he's won 66 deals and lost 10, Matt's doing something extremely well. And when I would look at, if I were to look at this, I'd say, okay, what is Matt doing? Or two things. I might look at who he's targeting, uh, how he's targeting, and start to guide the rest of the team to get up to that sort of deal one, I guess, number here that he has.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I think you mentioned before, looking at Kyle, he's won all his deals. So he's 100%. He's shooting 100% from the free throw line. If we look at this with Kyle, maybe we look at the deal quality, and we're seeing that maybe he's won a couple less deals, but they've all been really high revenue deals, and that might be the reason here. So it's just
Hmm.
kind of an analysis across your team to see, how many deals are won versus lost, and then you can really start to pinpoint any sort of process to get, I think, mitigate your won to loss, and then also increase the overall number of your deals won.
And yeah, to go back to things that you keep saying, like this is not to punish, this is not for getting into things like that. But when we're talking about these business growth reports, it's really you want to be answering or asking the questions why and how. Like keep going deeper to understand like why does Matt have 5 times more opportunities closed than any other rep? How is Kyle winning so many deals? How can Mark improve some of his, like what can we learn from what Matt and Kyle are doing to help the other reps? But again, it's not, you're not coming in here and saying, well, Mark's the bottom performer, he's got to go, but using this to help your overall business growth. So another great report here, and it looks like you're about to slice it in yet another way.
Yeah, and I think just to piggyback off your comment, I think another way you might want to view this is looking at also total deal value.
Hmm.
And then, I mean, that's just another way to view it. But again, if Kyle, we had happened to have, just all wins, but was at the same value as Matt, well, then maybe that's again another discussion of where do we need to target to get everybody else up to that particular level.
Hmm. Great insight. Okay, now we're on to our third, we're calling it a report, but this is one report that you're essentially going to slice and dice in a number of different ways, what we're kind of calling like this split the funnel concept, where you're looking at the source. Where are these opportunities coming from? Because as they come in, you might look at your business and say, hey, we created 100 deals this past quarter and we won 50% of them. That's great. But what you don't know is those deals are all coming from different places. Sometimes they are coming in, you have an account executive going outbound and they're generating that deal. Sometimes they're coming in over from a referral, one of your clients recommends them, or sometimes they just come to your website, they heard about you some way and they say, hey, I want to work with you. What does that look like? Those three sources are going to have very different conversion rates, like how well you win and lose them. They're going to have different deal sizes, most likely, as well. So, going a layer deeper to really understand the differences between those is going to help massively inform your strategy with how do you start to go about trying to acquire clients moving forward. So, I'll let you start it from the top with this.
Yeah, Sam, I think you bring up a couple of really, really good points here, and kind of thinking out loud. But I think anybody that's probably watching this podcast has had to do some sort of sales or marketing in some capacity, right? And I think there's always that, the inbounds are always the ideal, right? But I think people can get into a habit of thinking they're getting way more inbound wins than they actually are. And this is a report that can really pinpoint that exact, I mean, just at a glance here.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think, one thing that we talked about, or we'll talk about as well, is, this is just kind of a very simple here. We're looking at, if I hover over, you can see where all of our deals won are coming from. So inbound, being the leader here, and then, our deals lost. And then we can look at the value here. So, again, taking it a step further to see maybe we had, not the case here, but if you had won more inbound, but your outbound deals had higher value, that's where I think you start to make some business decisions on, do we need to put more effort into our outbound, uh, efforts to grow the business, or
Mm-hmm.
do we're getting a lot of inbound wins, but how can we capture that big whale to get that revenue amount up to the outbound stage?
Yeah. And even from like a CEO perspective of if I need to grow 2x this year, what costs me more in terms of do I spend more money on marketing to go and drive more inbound, or do I go and acquire someone else on the biz dev side? What's their salary? What's their overhead? What's the benefits cost? Like if I invest $100,000, what's going to take me further in terms of this revenue contribution?
Absolutely. I mean, really good point there. And to continue with that, one of the reports that we put together here is looking at, a quarterly view of that basically same report, but over time you're beginning to see where those, sources are beginning to increase with, or rather evolve over time. So, from here we see that outbound has slowly grown as well as inbound. So maybe that's a big marketing effort that you worked on a little SEO for your website to get some folks coming in that way. And then continuing your outbound efforts. So again, I think I'll let you speak a little bit to this with your marketing expertise, but love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, this is always the fun one. It's kind of carrying on from that conversation earlier. Like if I go and invest more resources, how are they doing over time? So you create almost a cohorted type report where the one on the left we have how many deals are created from a specific source in a certain time period, and then we all know you're not closing a deal the same day that it's created. So if we go and look back at give the time lag effect of, okay, those deals that came to fruition, they're either closed won or they're closed lost, like how did those pan out in that time period? So you can also map and say, I know we did a big outbound push in Q3, I know we spent 3x the budget in Q4. From a marketing standpoint, was it worth it? So this is going to help you understand, as you are starting to scale channels, are they or aren't they effective? So in the visual on the left, we see the outbound chart is growing steadily quarter over quarter. And then on the right, we can see, yeah, the outbound's growing slowly, steadily as well, but it's not at the same rate. And that's where you can look at the conversion rate of it. So it's like in that last quarter, we've got what, five outbound deals that are closed won, and you compare that to almost 30 that were created. So it's not a phenomenal win rate there. And what you can do is compare that to inbound. Okay, we've got 17 inbound that were closed won, and you compare that to about 2025 that were created. So okay, my win rates are in inbound are much higher. So that goes back to the point, how do we get more of those? What can we do to generate that? So is it the SEO? Is it creating stronger brand presence and awareness? Is it empowering our existing clients to talk well about us, join our podcast, to share different things with their networks and everything else? So it's creating that flywheel, so to speak. But it's really, again, understanding like what's working, what's not, and then using that to inform, hey, we just did this big bet on outbound, it didn't quite work, so let's course correct on it. Obviously, if it's not working it this way, let it run another quarter. Hey, maybe it was a seasonal thing, I don't know. But if 3 quarters you see the same thing over and over, that's not just a random data point. That's a trend, and you need to do something about it if you recognize it's not that effective. So again, from the business growth perspective, you need to be mindful, a good steward of the resources that you have if you truly want to grow. Or if you're good with saying, hey, I have a great work-life balance, I don't need to do much more, you can find your perfect mix of how much outbounding do I need to do, how much marketing do I need to be applying, how much do I need to be thinking about pulling referrals in, or any other resource. But this is a really good way to fine-tune like what's the ideal mix for you for driving good internal business that's going to help your bottom line.
Absolutely. And, again, I think this is applicable across the board. This can be whether you have a dedicated sales team that's going out and capturing business, or again, if you're one person show and kind of driving business yourself, it's really important to see. And a term you use that I think is super key here is trends. I don't think it's necessarily practical to look at maybe 1 month and say, okay, I've got X amount of outbound, that's great. You want to look over time to see, because like you said, there could be so many factors that could be a month that people are just having a bad month. I don't know. But it's important to look over time so you can really start to pinpoint where you need to put your efforts to grow the business. And then from there, you just start to manage accordingly. And then I'd say you can then really start to build out a team and a process to further expand on the places that you are growing your business.
Chef's kiss. Beautifully said. So yeah, I couldn't agree with that more. So that was a fun one. Hopefully it gets people, again, really think, not just go in and say like, this is good, bad, but why is it good? Why is it bad? What are we doing about it? How are we internalizing this, learning from it, growing from it? So really looking forward to hopefully hearing from some listeners who have started running these types of reports or are curious about it and reach out to us to get some help. So more than happy to help anyone who comes into that with us and wants to know. So please reach out. Don't hesitate to it. But Logan, as always, man, I appreciate you joining us for this show. As I said, we're gonna have to find a new series for you to come back with, because the people love you, man. We gotta make it happen.
Hey, we'll give the people what they want. We'll come around to that soon.
Love it. All right. Well, as we wrap, Becoming a Hiring Machine is a production of Loxo. If you like this episode, but you're not sure where to go next, we've got a link to a similar episode in the show notes for you. And you can find those in the description of your favorite podcast streaming platform, as well as on our website, loxo.co/podcast. Full video episodes are available. Strongly recommend it for this reporting series, as we did show a number of different graphs and visuals. We have that on YouTube as well as on our website. If you have questions, send them to us, podcast@loxo.co. So, all right, everyone, that's the show. That's the mini series. This was the final Tactical Tuesday episode mini series on things reporting. So thank you all for joining. Until next time.